Imagine waking up at work with no memories of who you are outside the office. When you leave the office, you immediately walk right back in because you have no memories of anything on the outside. That is because you have been severed. This is the premise for the TV show Severance, a fantastic drama on Apple TV with some very deep philosophical undertones, some of which we will be exploring today, especially John Locke's theory of personhood and identity that shook up the philosophical world. In this video, we'll explore how Locke's theory of personal identity helps us understand severance and what it reveals about selfhood, morality, and even the nature of the soul. Let's begin. Although this is a mostly spoiler-free video, it might contain some minor spoilers, so please be warned. First, let's talk a little bit about the show itself and the setup of the show. If you are familiar with the setup of the show and just want to skip straight to the philosophy, now would be a good time to do so. In the TV show Severance, the mysterious corporation Lumen has invented a procedure called Severance, which is performed by inserting some kind of a chip into the brain of the employee. This chip somehow completely partitions memory based on the physical location of the employee. So when an employee enters a specific space called the severed floor, which is a restricted floor in the Lumen office building, they become unable to recall anything about their life outside. Similarly, when they leave the severed floor, they lose all memory of what happened inside. So this effectively splits the employee into two distinct identities, commonly referred to in the show as an innie and an outie. The innie only has memories from inside the severed floor and has no knowledge of their life outside of work, while the outie retains all their memories from the outside world but has no recollection of what happens at Lumen on the severed floor. This setup has many profound implications, both philosophically and scientifically. Before diving into those, though, we need to clarify what kind of memory severance is actually going on here. Because severance is modifying memory, we need to establish here how exactly this is working and what kind of memory is being affected. So let's quickly go over the different kinds of memory. First, we have procedural memory. This includes skills like habits, typing, making coffee, riding a bike, etc. Things you don't really have to think about. Episodic memory. This includes personal, autobiographical experiences like remembering what you ate for breakfast or a conversation you had. And then there's semantic memory or factual memory. This involves factual knowledge, like, for example, knowing that Paris is the capital of France, etc. In Severance, at least until the middle of season 2, where I'm at right now, it appears that the procedural memory of the severed employee remains intact. Severed employees can still perform basic tasks like using a computer or navigating the office. They don't forget how to walk once they're severed. However, it is unclear whether procedural memories formed post-severance carry over between the outie and the innie. The show seems to suggest that they don't, but maybe if someone's more clear on this, they can comment below. The situation with semantic memory is a little bit more ambiguous. The innies seem to retain some general knowledge about the world, but any facts related to the outie life are erased. They don't know their own name, address, or personal details, and they have no recollection of their hobbies or relationships outside of work factually, and this is made pretty clear in the show. Also, during a scene where the innie is being born, so to speak, or first created, they can't seem to factually remember some basic details. What is very clear, though, is that the episodic memory is completely disrupted. Once an employee enters the severed floor for the first time, their innie's autobiographical memory begins totally anew. Their first conscious experience is waking up in the office. They have no recollection of having any life before severance, no episodes of any previous life. Conversely, the outie is completely unable to form new episodic memories while inside the severed floor. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's get into some of the philosophy behind this setup and see if we can explore what it means to be a person. In an essay concerning human understanding, John Locke presents an influential and revolutionary answer to the question of personal identity. Let's go straight to the book and break it down.
This being premised to find wherein personal identity consists, we must consider what person stands for, which, I think, is a thinking intelligent being that has reason and reflection and can consider itself as itself, the same thinking thing in different times and places, which it does only by that consciousness, which is inseparable from thinking, and as it seems to me essential to it, it being impossible for anyone to perceive without perceiving that he does perceive. And as far as this consciousness can be extended backwards to any past action or thought, so far reaches the identity of that person, it is the same self now it was then. And 'tis by the same self with this present one that now reflects on it, that action was done.
Unpacking this, we can see the following. Locke considers personal identity to be based on a thinking entity's consciousness of itself as a thinking thing, basically being self-aware, persisting across different times and places. This identity does not depend on a particular substance, whether material or immaterial. A person exists insofar as they can remember past actions and be accountable for them. This is important. Locke stresses that, contrary to many of his contemporaries, the essence of personhood is actually not in the physical substance of whatever generates the self-awareness, whether it be a soul, brain, or whatever, but is instead in the ability to be accountable and to remember a series of past actions. Locke also distinguishes further between a man, the concept of a man, which is basically a human body, and a person, which is, like I said above, a conscious, self-reflecting entity that has a stream of memories going into the past that they can be accountable for. This makes sense because human bodies undergo constant cellular replacement, yet we consider ourselves the same person over time. So our personhood can't be dependent on the matter in our bodies. So to explore this idea, Locke has a famous thought experiment, the prince and the cobbler. In this thought experiment, Locke imagines that the consciousness of a prince is transferred into the body of a cobbler, and the prince's mind now inhabits this new body. So according to Locke, this new entity, who still remembers being the prince and is accountable for the prince's past actions and is now in the body of a cobbler, is in fact the prince, can be considered the prince. He just inhabits a different physical form. So this reinforces Locke's argument that personal identity is actually rooted in memory and consciousness rather than the physical form of the body. Okay, now let's go back to severance. Now we can see that under Locke's definition, the severed employees' bodies remain the same, but their consciousness is split, making the innie and the outie, in fact, two separate persons under Locke's definition, inhabiting the same man. So they're the same man, but two different people. Not only do their senses of self differ, since neither retains awareness of what the other has done, but their memories also form two distinct, non-overlapping sequences through time, creating two separate people. So upon hearing this idea at the time, some people had some objections. One of them was the sleep objection, which Locke actually brings up in his book. What about sleep? When I sleep, I'm not necessarily conscious, nor do I remember everything that happened during sleep. Does that mean I become a different person each night? Well, Locke acknowledges this issue in the same section, arguing that if a person's sleeping self were to commit actions, remember them, and be accountable for them, but the waking self had no memory of those actions, then yes, the sleeping self would be a distinct person. Hypothetically, if the sleeping person remembered their actions throughout the lifetime that they were asleep, then yes, your sleeping self would be a distinct person, be severed in a sense. However, if your sleeping self just remembered the actions that they did that night and every night was different, then they would be a different person every night. So this is reinforced in our language, this idea of not being yourself, we can say in English, or being out of your mind. This idea also ties into an interesting moment in Severance Season 2, Episode 6, so if you haven't gotten that far, there are definite spoilers ahead. It is revealed in this episode that Christopher Walken's character, Bert, was encouraged to undergo severance by his partner, Attila, because it was believed that a severed individual might be judged differently by God. This aligns closely with Locke's discussion of moral responsibility in the same chapter. Locke suggests that divine judgment depends on personal identity through memory. Locke's thinking in part also comes from a legal understanding. To judge someone in court, either on earth or in heaven, you have to be dealing with an entity that remembers and can give account for their action. So according to Locke, the innie and outie are two separate people inhabiting the same body. But what about the soul? Do they have two different souls as well? Locke remains ambivalent about what a soul actually is and its role in divine judgment, something that caused great controversy at the time. Locke moved the focus on judgment from the soul to persons or people in terms of judgment. To Locke, A soul is a kind of thinking substance, or perhaps thinking matter, or something else that can never be known by man. So going back to Severance, we can say it's unclear if the any and outie share the same soul, according to Locke's definition, of course. However, Bert and Attila are correct. Under Locke's definition and theories, the any and the outie would in fact be judged by God to be two different people, and might very well receive different divine judgments. The environment of Lumen is filled with religious themes, and these themes become more and more obvious as the show goes on. The most striking to me is the way the office space is portrayed, totally white and featureless, images that one would normally associate with heaven. Lumen and its founder are, of course, almost godlike and are frequently prayed to. The creation of the Ini could be analogous to a person's soul in the afterlife, their environment determined by the decisions they made during their time on Earth. Some might say it is more like hell, but the show goes to great lengths to portray the outside world as dark, dreary, and filled with loneliness and hardship. Ironically, Lumen might also argue that the Innies are protected from the meaningless and worries of the outside world. These themes might be discussed in a future video. Severance is a very profound television series, and many other questions remain about alienation, love, and others. If you like videos like this, please leave a like and comment about what you want to see in future videos. Thanks for watching.